Abigail Burroughs, who had head and neck cancer, couldn't get a drug called Erbitux, even though it showed promise in stopping those tumors. Months later, she died.
She was out of options.
Her father, Frank Burroughs.
4.5 years after she died, the drug was approved for head and neck cancer. That is ridiculous.
Over the last 100 years, prescription drugs have been a key driver in improving the standard of living in the United States. Yet, in the last 15 years, drug innovation has stagnated. People are dying because the current drug approval processes make it impossible for corporations to deliver the essential drugs to the people who need it to survive. At the same time, the high development costs of drugs have made it unaffordable to not only people in the poorest nations of all, but even those in the richest nations in the world. Today, we will explore the controversial topic that the current drug approval processes are too stringent and lengthy, and also discuss how pharmaceutical companies can address it.
The FDA process consists of 4 stages, taking an average of 8 to 12 years to pass. In 1993, the average cost of developing a new drug was estimated at around $359 million. By 2001, this figure was now estimated at $500 million. While development costs have increased, it is estimated that only one of 5,000 to 10,000 compounds which enter preclinical testing ultimately gets approval. Industry-wide R&D spending has almost quadrupled in the past 15 years, while the number of approved compounds each year has fallen to 1/3 of its original levels. So what real effect has this had on the pharmaceuticals on changing their strategy due to the cumbersome FDA process?
That the process can be intimidating to pharmaceutical research. Pfizer just announced that they're no longer pursuing cardiovascular medications, in part because of the difficulties in getting FDA approval. And I would remind you that that is the single leading cause of death in Michigan.
In reaction to the stringent process and increased costs, pharmaceutical companies are spending more on marketing, shifting their focus to selling current drugs rather than creating new drugs. The problem is a resource constraint in reviewing the process, not the actual process itself in approving drugs.
Because of the number of applications, the government approving board really is at their necks in terms of working at capacity.
This resource constraint slows innovation and makes it incredibly costly for pharmaceuticals to develop new drugs. Pharmaceuticals continue to underperform the markets, leading investors to reallocate their capital into more profitable sectors. As the amount of invested capital shrinks in the industry, companies will no longer be able to afford the high R&D costs to create new drugs. So what is the health situation if nothing is done?
I'm feeling really sick. I think I have a case of acute viral rhinopharyngitis.
You mean like the common cold?
Exactly. Do you know if there is any drugs I can take?
I mean, just try simple analgesics, like aspirin.
Gosh, that is so yesterday. Those things just treats the symptoms, and not the disease, correct?
Yeah, well the truth is, we still don't have a cure for the common cold.
But aspirin was invented in 1897. Do you mean to tell me that, now that it's 150 years later, we still have made no progress?
It's not like we haven't tried. About 30 years ago tons of companies had made many developments. However, most of them went bankrupt as the FDA kept delaying the approval of those drugs. Apparently, that hurt a lot of investors, and they stopped investing in pharmaceutical firms. Banks of course would not lend to unprofitable businesses. The pharma industry shrunk as a result. And without the economic incentives, the smartest people no longer wanted to study science, and became bankers instead.
Can bankers cure my acute viral rhinopharyngitis?
No, only scientists, doctors, and pharmacists can. But good luck trying to find one of those today.
Oh no.
So what are some potential solutions to the problems?
Improve understanding of the public, to be encouraged to participate in trials, like smart allocation of resources into the necessary people to review these protocols, and finally potentially an alternate arm of putting through potentially high impact drugs under an accelerated process could be potential solutions.
So you've heard Dr. Alex Louie. You've seen the hell that will occur if the drug approval process continues to stifle innovation. So what can we do? We can't relax the standards. People's lives are too important. But there are things we can do. Following Dr. Louie's recommendation, we have to give the FDA more resources. First off, we believe pharmaceutical companies should suggest and support an FDA tax to fund additional resources for the FDA to review drugs more effectively. This is a win-win-win situation. The FDA will receive the resources it needs to protect the public, pharmaceutical companies can reduce lead times and increase profits, and the public will ultimately benefit from a larger variety of drugs and lower drug prices. We also believe pharmaceutical companies should appeal to the public through running mass marketing campaigns, explaining the critical arguments and benefits behind expediting the drug approval process. The public must understand that increasing the FDA's resources will lead to net social benefits. If the drug process is not addressed, the real victims will not be the pharmaceutical companies. They will be you and everyone you know. The current drug approval process has made it impossible for pharmaceutical companies to innovate profitably. While corporations cannot change public policy, they have the power to act now and make a difference to avoid a future society that's deprived of life-essential healthcare advances.